Jake Thompson never believed in aliens. Working as a baby nurse in a small hospital in Colorado, he spent his days taking care of crying newborns and helping worried parents. At 28 years old, Jake thought he had seen everything when it came to fussy babies. Boy, was he wrong. It was a Tuesday night in October when everything changed. Jake had just finished his shift at Mountain View Hospital and was driving home on the empty highway. The road stretched endlessly under a star-filled sky, with nothing but desert on both sides. He had made this drive hundreds of times before, usually listening to music or thinking about his day. Tonight felt different somehow, though he couldn't explain why. The clock on his dashboard showed 11:47 p.m. when his car radio started acting up. Static filled the speakers, making weird, crackling sounds. Jake reached over to change the station, but every channel had the same noise. That's when he noticed something even stranger. His phone had no signal bars at all. "What the heck is going on?" Jake muttered to himself, tapping his phone screen. He had never lost signal on this stretch of road before. Then his headlights started flickering. First just a little bit, then more and more until they were flashing on and off like a broken Christmas light. Jake pulled over to the side of the road, thinking maybe his car battery was dying. He turned off the engine and stepped out to check under the hood. That's when he saw it. At first, Jake thought it was just a really bright star. But stars don't move, and this light was definitely moving. It started as a tiny dot in the sky, but it was getting bigger and brighter by the second. Jake stood there with his mouth open, watching this thing come closer and closer. The light wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. It didn't hurt his eyes like a regular bright light would. Instead, it seemed to glow with colors that shifted and changed. Blue, then silver, then something that wasn't quite purple, but wasn't quite pink either. Jake found himself feeling strangely calm, even though his brain was screaming that this was impossible. As the object got closer, Jake could see it wasn't just a light. It was huge, bigger than any airplane he had ever seen. The shape was smooth and curved, like someone had taken a giant teardrop and made it out of liquid metal. It moved without making any sound at all, floating through the air like it weighed nothing. Jake wanted to run back to his car and drive away as fast as possible, but his feet wouldn't move. It wasn't that he was scared, exactly. It was more like his whole body had forgotten how to be afraid. A warm, peaceful feeling washed over him, like when his grandmother used to hug him as a kid. The craft landed in the field next to the highway, settling down as gently as a feather. Jake watched in amazement as a section of the smooth wall simply melted away, creating a doorway filled with soft, golden light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, figures began to emerge. Jake had seen plenty of alien movies, so he expected little green men or scary monsters with big teeth. What he saw instead took his breath away. The beings walking toward him looked almost human, but more beautiful than any person he had ever met. They were tall and graceful, moving like dancers. Their skin seemed to glow from the inside, and their eyes were larger than human eyes, filled with intelligence and kindness. But it was the leader who really caught Jake's attention. She was clearly in charge. The others followed a step behind her, and she carried herself like royalty. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with long hair that seemed to flow like water and clothes that looked like they were made from starlight itself. And in her arms, she carried something that made Jake's heart skip a beat. It was a baby. Even from a distance, Jake could hear the child crying, but this wasn't like any baby cry he had heard in all his years of nursing. This cry seemed to echo through the air itself, creating visible ripples like sound waves you could actually see. The baby's wails were so powerful that Jake felt them in his chest, like standing too close to a really loud speaker. The beautiful woman approached Jake, and suddenly words appeared in his mind. Not words he heard with his ears, but thoughts that felt like his own, even though he knew they weren't. "Please," the voice in his head said, filled with desperation that made Jake's heart ache. You work with infants, yes? I can sense it in your energy. My child has been crying for many of your days and nights. Nothing we do can calm him. Jake tried to speak, but only a small croak came out. He cleared his throat and tried again. How are you talking in my head? We communicate through thought connection, the voice explained gently. It is how my people have always spoken. But that is not important now. What matters is my child. She stepped closer, and Jake could see the baby more clearly. The infant looked almost human, but his skin had the same inner glow as his mother's. His tiny face was red from crying, and his little fists waved in the air. What struck Jake most was how familiar the scene was. He had seen countless parents holding crying babies, wearing that same exhausted, worried expression. I am the queen of my people, the voice continued in Jake's mind. We have traveled far across the stars, but we are in great need. My son is special. He will one day help save our dying world. But first, he must be at peace. And nothing we do helps him rest. Jake found his voice again. What do you want from me? The queen looked directly into his eyes, and Jake felt like she could see straight into his soul. You have the gift of calming infants. I have watched your kind from afar, and I know that some humans possess this ability more than others. Will you help my child find peace? I don't understand, Jake said, though part of him was already reaching toward the crying baby. His nursing instincts were kicking in, and all he could think about was helping this little one feel better. The queen's next words made Jake's world spin completely upside down. If you can calm my child and teach him to find peace, I will offer you my hand in marriage. You would become my king and help rule over worlds beyond your imagination. Jake's mouth fell open. He stared at this impossibly beautiful alien queen holding her crying baby, offering him marriage and a throne among the stars. For a full minute, he couldn't say anything at all. His brain couldn't process what he was hearing. Finally, he managed to whisper, Are you serious? Completely serious, she replied, through their mental connection. My people need what your people have, the ability to comfort, to love without logic, to heal hearts as well as bodies. And my son needs someone who can teach him to be calm in this universe. Jake looked at the crying baby, then at the queen, then back at the baby. Everything about this situation was impossible, but the child's cries were getting louder and more urgent. His nursing instincts were stronger than his confusion. Can I hold him? Jake asked. The queen smiled for the first time, and it was like watching the sun rise. That is exactly what I was hoping you would say. As she gently placed the alien infant in Jake's arms, he felt the baby's cries vibrate through his whole body, but he also felt something else. A connection, an understanding that went beyond species or worlds. This was just a baby who needed comfort, and Jake knew exactly how to provide it. What happened next would change not just Jake's life, but the future of two entire worlds. Jake held the alien baby in his arms, and immediately knew this wasn't going to be easy. The little one's cries were unlike anything he had experienced in his 5 years of nursing. Each wail seemed to create actual waves in the air around them, and Jake could feel the sound vibrating through his bones. It was like holding a tiny earthquake. Oh, wow, Jake whispered, gently bouncing the baby the way he had done thousands of times before. You're really upset, aren't you, little guy? The queen watched him carefully, hope shining in her large, luminous eyes. Through their mental connection, Jake could feel her desperation. This wasn't just any crying baby. This was her world's future, and nothing her advanced people had tried was working. What have you already tried? Jake asked out loud, then remembered she could hear his thoughts. He focused his mind on the question instead. Images flowed into Jake's head, showing him all the methods the aliens had attempted. They had used sound frequencies that could calm entire planets. They had tried light patterns that usually soothed their kind. They even had machines that could regulate emotions, but nothing worked on this special child. "The problem," the Queen explained in his mind, "is that my son was born during a rare cosmic event. He is more sensitive than any of our kind has ever been. He feels everything more deeply, sounds, lights, even thoughts and emotions around him." Jake nodded, understanding immediately. He had worked with extra-sensitive babies before, children who seemed to feel everything more intensely than others. So all those high-tech solutions probably overwhelmed him even more, Jake said. "Exactly," the Queen replied, and Jake heard surprise in her mental voice. "You understand this already?" "Sometimes the simplest approach works best with sensitive babies," Jake explained, slowly walking in small circles while holding the infant. The baby's cries softened just a tiny bit. "Your people are probably used to complex solutions, but babies usually just need basic comfort." As Jake continued to gently sway back and forth, the Queen gestured toward her spacecraft. "Will you come aboard? Perhaps in a quieter environment you might have better success?" Jake hesitated for a moment. Getting into an alien spaceship wasn't exactly something they taught in nursing school. But looking down at the crying baby in his arms, his professional instincts took over. This child needed help, and Jake had never walked away from a baby in need. "Okay," he said. "Let's try this." Walking into the alien ship was like stepping into a dream. The walls seemed to be made of pearl that glowed with soft, changing colors. The floor felt solid under Jake's feet, but it had a slight give to it, like walking on the world's most comfortable carpet. Everything was curved and flowing, with no sharp edges anywhere. But what really amazed Jake was how quiet it was inside. After hearing the baby's cries echo across the desert, the ship's interior seemed to absorb sound, making everything peaceful and calm. "This is beautiful," Jake said out loud, still gently rocking the baby. The Queen led him through corridors. That seemed to stretch further than the ship looked from outside. Jake's brain couldn't quite figure out how the spaces worked, but he was too focused on the baby to worry about alien architecture. They entered what was clearly the nursery, and Jake's jaw dropped. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed moving pictures of distant stars and galaxies. Soft music played, not through speakers but somehow from the walls themselves. Toys floated in the air without any strings or supports, moving in slow, hypnotic patterns. In the center of the room sat the most beautiful crib Jake had ever seen. It looked like it was carved from a single massive pearl, with sides that curved up like flower petals, blankets that seemed to be made of liquid starlight draped over the edges. "This is incredible," Jake breathed. But, the Queen asked. Jake walked around the room, still holding the crying baby. It might be too much for him, all these floating toys, the moving stars on the ceiling, the music from everywhere. For a sensitive baby, this could be overstimulating rather than calming. The Queen looked confused. "But we designed it to be perfect. Everything here is beautiful and peaceful." "For adults, yes," Jake agreed. "But babies are different. Sometimes they need things to be simpler, quieter, more like what they experienced before they were born." Jake had an idea. "Can you make the room darker and stop the floating toys? Maybe make the ceiling solid instead of showing all those moving stars?" Within moments, the Queen had somehow adjusted the room. The toys settled gently onto shelves. The star display faded to a soft, solid blue, and the light dimmed to a warm, golden glow. "Better," Jake said. And sure enough, the baby's crying became a little less intense. For the next hour, Jake tried everything he knew. He checked if the baby needed changing, Alien diapers were surprisingly similar to human ones, just made of some material that felt like silk. He tried different holding positions, different ways of walking and swaying. He hummed lullabies his own mother had sung to him. Slowly, gradually, the baby began to respond. When Jake hummed, the little one's cries would pause for a moment, as if he was listening. When Jake held him against his chest, the baby seemed to calm down slightly, maybe responding to Jake's heartbeat. "He's starting to trust me," Jake explained to the Queen. "Babies can sense when someone genuinely cares about them. It's not about having the right equipment or technology. It's about connection." The Queen watched in fascination as Jake continued his gentle care. "My people have forgotten how to do this," she admitted. "We evolved beyond what we call primitive emotions long ago. We think with logic, not feelings." "But babies don't understand logic yet," Jake said softly. "They only understand love, comfort, and safety. Those aren't primitive emotions. They're the foundation of everything else." As the hours passed, Jake began to understand just how different this alien civilization was. They had incredible technology that could do amazing things, but they had lost touch with the simple basic needs that all babies have, no matter what planet they come from. The Queen told him about their world, a place of crystal cities and floating gardens, where their people lived for thousands of years and could travel between stars as easily as Jake drove to work. But they had no crime, no war, and no sadness, because they had eliminated strong emotions from their society. "The problem is," the Queen explained, "my son needs those emotions to develop properly. Without them, his special abilities will never grow, and our people will never find the new home we desperately need." Jake looked down at the baby, who was finally starting to settle down. The infant's eyes were beginning to droop, and his cries had turned into soft whimpers. "So you need me to teach him how to feel," Jake said, understanding the full scope of what he was being asked to do. "Yes," the Queen replied. "And perhaps teach us as well." As Jake continued to rock the alien baby, he realized this was about much more than just stopping a crying infant. This was about bridging two completely different worlds, one that had forgotten how to love, and one that maybe had never learned how to truly think beyond the stars. The baby's eyes finally closed, and for the first time in weeks, complete silence filled the ship. Jake had done it. He had calmed the alien prince. But this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything he thought he knew about love, family, and what it meant to be human. 3 days had passed since Jake first stepped onto the alien ship, and he was exhausted. The baby would calm down for a few hours, sometimes even sleep for a little while, but then the crying would start all over again. Jake had tried everything he could think of: different songs, various holding positions, even making funny faces that usually worked with human babies. The Queen, who had told him her name was something that sounded like Luna in his language, never left his side. She watched every move he made, learning how humans cared for their young. Jake could feel her growing frustration and worry through their mental connection. "Maybe I'm not the right person for this," Jake said on the morning of the 4th day. Sitting in a comfortable chair that had somehow formed itself around his tired body. The baby was sleeping fitfully in his arms, making little whimpering sounds that meant he would probably start crying again soon. "You are the only person who has gotten him to sleep at all," Luna replied gently. "Before you came, he had been crying constantly for what you would call 2 weeks. Jake looked down at the little alien prince. During these few days, he had grown attached to the child. The baby had the most beautiful eyes, large and expressive like his mother's, but with a curiosity that reminded Jake of every human infant he had ever cared for. When the little one was calm, he would stare at Jake with such intelligence that it was almost like having a conversation. "Tell me about where you come from," Jake said, hoping that understanding more about their world might help him figure out what the baby needed. Luna's mental voice grew sad as she shared images with Jake. He saw crystal cities floating among the clouds, gardens that grew in mid-air, and people who moved with perfect grace and efficiency. Everything was beautiful and organized. But as Jake watched these mental pictures, he realized something was missing. "I don't see any children playing," Jake said, "or people laughing, or anyone who looks happy." "We eliminated such displays long ago," Luna explained. "We found that strong emotions led to conflict and inefficiency. Our people live in perfect harmony now." "But what about love?" Jake asked. "What about joy? What about the feelings that make life worth living?" Luna was quiet for a long moment. "We remember those concepts from our ancient history, but we believed they were holding us back from reaching our full potential." Jake felt his heart break a little. "Luna, those aren't things that hold you back. They're what make you who you are." As if responding to Jake's emotional state, the baby in his arms began to stir. His little face scrunched up, and Jake knew another crying session was about to begin. But this time, instead of trying to prevent it, Jake decided to try something different. He began to sing, not a lullaby, but a song his grandfather used to sing when Jake was scared during thunderstorms. It was a simple song about being brave and being loved, and Jake put all of his emotions into it. He sang about missing his family back on Earth, about being amazed by the wonders he had seen on this ship, and about how much he had grown to care for this little alien prince. As Jake sang, something incredible began to happen. The baby's skin started to glow brighter, but not in a distressed way. The light was warm and gentle, pulsing in rhythm with Jake's heartbeat. The little one's eyes opened wide, and instead of crying, he made a soft, cooing sound. "Jake," Luna whispered. And he could hear the awe in her mental voice. "Look!" Jake looked around and gasped. The walls of the nursery were reflecting the baby's glow, creating patterns of light that danced around the room like living rainbows. It was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. "What's happening?" Jake asked, still singing softly. "He is responding to your emotions," Luna explained, her mental voice trembling with excitement. "The glow. It is how our people used to express joy long ago. I have only seen it in ancient recordings." The baby reached up with one tiny hand and touched Jake's face. In that moment, Jake felt a connection that went beyond words or even thoughts. He could sense the child's feelings, curiosity, contentment, and something that felt unmistakably like love. "He's trying to communicate," Jake realized. "Not with words or thoughts like you do, but with feelings." Luna moved closer, and for the first time since Jake had known her, he saw tears in her eyes. "We had forgotten," she whispered. "We had completely forgotten that this is how our children learn to connect with the world." Jake continued to sing, and the baby's glow grew steadier and more peaceful. The little prince was finally, truly, calm. But more than that, he was happy. Jake could feel the child's joy like sunshine warming his heart. "This is what he needed all along," Jake said softly. "Not just to be quiet, but to feel loved and connected. He needed someone to share emotions with him, to teach him that feelings are beautiful, not something to be afraid of." Luna sat down beside Jake, staring at her son in wonder. "In trying to become perfect, we lost the most important thing of all. We lost our ability to love." "It's not lost," Jake assured her. "It's just sleeping, like your son was sleeping under all that, crying. The love is still there. You just need to remember how to let it out." The baby made another happy cooing sound and grabbed Jake's finger with his tiny hand. The simple gesture filled Jake with such overwhelming joy that his own eyes began to water. "I think I'm starting to understand," Luna said, and Jake felt something change in their mental connection. Instead of just words and images, he could sense her emotions, wonder, gratitude, and yes, love for her child. When I first offered you marriage, Luna continued, it was because we needed your skills to help our people survive. But now, Jake prompted gently. Luna looked at him with those luminous eyes, and Jake felt her emotions wash over him like a warm wave. Now I realize we don't just need your skills, we need your heart. We need to remember how to feel, how to love, how to be truly alive instead of just existing. The baby yawned and snuggled closer to Jake, his skin still glowing with contentment. In that peaceful moment, Jake understood that he wasn't just holding an alien infant, he was holding the future of an entire civilization that had forgotten how to love. And somehow, through the simple act of caring for one small child, Jake had helped them remember what it meant to be truly alive. So, Jake said with a smile, I guess this means I passed the test? Luna laughed. The first genuine laugh Jake had heard from any of her people. The sound was like music, and the baby's glow pulsed brighter in response. Oh, Jake, she said, I think you did much more than that. I think you just saved us all. Now that the baby was finally peaceful, Jake thought he would have time to rest and think clearly. But Luna had other plans. She wanted to show him everything, her world, her people, and what his life could be like if he accepted her marriage proposal. I need you to understand what you would be choosing, Luna explained as they walked through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The baby slept contentedly in Jake's arms, occasionally making soft, happy sounds that made both adults smile. The first place Luna took him was what she called the observation deck. When the walls became transparent, Jake nearly dropped the baby in shock. They weren't just flying through space. They were traveling between dimensions, watching entire galaxies fold and unfold like flowers blooming in fast motion. This is incredible, Jake whispered, staring at stars being born in swirls of cosmic dust. How is this even possible? My people learned to travel this way thousands of years ago, Luna replied. We can visit any world, any time, any reality we choose. As my husband, you would have access to wonders beyond anything humans have ever imagined. Jake watched a nebula spin past the window, its colors shifting from deep purple to brilliant gold. Part of him was thrilled by the idea of exploring the universe, but another part felt overwhelmed. Luna, I'm just a guy who takes care of babies. I don't know anything about ruling galaxies or traveling through dimensions. You know the most important thing of all, Luna said softly. You know how to love. Over the next few days, Luna showed Jake more of their civilization. He met other members of her species, tall, graceful beings who moved with perfect efficiency but rarely smiled. They were all incredibly intelligent and kind, but Jake noticed something troubling. They treated him with respect, but they looked at their own children like they were solving math problems rather than caring for family. Watch this, Luna said one day, taking Jake to visit another family on the ship. The parents were highly respected scientists, and their young daughter was considered a genius, even by their advanced standards. But when the little girl tried to hug her mother, the woman gently pushed her away. Physical affection interferes with logical development, the mother explained to Jake in perfect, emotionless words. We provide everything she needs for optimal growth. Jake's heart broke, watching the little girl's face fall. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old in human years, but she was already learning to hide her feelings. After they left, Jake turned to Luna with tears in his eyes. They're teaching their children not to love, he said. That little girl just wanted a hug from her mom. This is why we need you, Luna replied. My son will grow up the same way unless someone teaches him differently. And if he does, His special abilities will never develop, and our people will die when our world becomes uninhabitable. Luna then showed Jake images of their dying planet. The sun was expanding, and dangerous radiation was making their beautiful Crystal Cities unsafe. They had maybe 100 years left before they would need to find a new home. But finding a suitable planet required the prince's unique dimensional abilities, which would only work if he learned to feel deep emotions. "So the fate of your entire species depends on your son learning to love?" Jake asked. "Yes," Luna said simply, "and on someone who can teach not just him, but all of us, how to feel again." The weight of responsibility was crushing. Jake sat in the nursery that night, holding the sleeping prince and trying to make sense of everything. He thought about his life back on Earth, his small apartment, his job at the hospital, his quiet evenings watching television. It wasn't exciting, but it was his life. "I keep thinking about my patients back home," Jake told Luna. "There's this one baby, little Tommy, who was born premature. His parents visit every day, and they're so scared but so hopeful. Who's going to take care of him if I don't come back?" Luna sat beside him, and Jake could feel her confusion through their mental connection. "Surely there are other nurses who can care for one human infant?" "It's not about having the skills," Jake tried to explain. "It's about caring. Tommy's parents trust me. I've been there for his worst nights and his best days. I'm part of his story now. But here, you could help save millions of lives," Luna pointed out. Jake sighed, looking down at the alien prince in his arms. "I know. And I've grown to love this little guy too. It's not an easy choice." Luna was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What scares you most about staying?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "I'm scared I'm not good enough. You're offering to make me a king, Luna. Kings are supposed to be wise and strong and know how to make big decisions. I'm just a regular person who happens to be good with babies." "Those regular qualities are exactly what we need," Luna said. "My people have been wise and strong for millennia, but we forgot how to be human. We need someone who remembers what it feels like to be ordinary, to struggle, to hope for simple things." "And what scares you?" Jake asked her. Luna's mental voice became very quiet. "I'm scared that I've forgotten how to be a good partner. My people don't marry for love. We form partnerships for logical reasons. I don't know how to be a wife who loves her husband instead of just respecting him." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. In all their conversations about saving civilizations and traveling through dimensions, he had almost forgotten that this was also about two people choosing to build a life together. "Luna," he said gently, "do you want to learn how to love? Or do you just think you should because it's necessary for your people?" She looked at him with those luminous eyes, and for the first time, he saw her not as an alien queen, but as a person who was just as scared and uncertain as he was. "I watch you with my son," she said softly, "and I see something beautiful that I want to be part of. When you sing to him, when you worry about him, when you smile because he's learning something new, I want to feel those things too. Not because I have to, but because I think I'm already starting to love both of you." The baby stirred in Jake's arms and opened his eyes, looking up at both of them. In that moment, Jake felt something click into place. This wasn't just about saving a civilization or exploring the universe. This was about a family that needed each other. And maybe, just maybe, about finding a love that was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. But choosing it would mean leaving everything he had ever known behind, and Jake still wasn't sure he was brave enough to take that leap. Jake's decision came in the most unexpected way. He had been agonizing over the choice for days, making lists in his head of reasons to stay and reasons to go, but in the end, it wasn't logic that decided for him. It was love. He was sitting in the nursery, holding the little prince while Luna worked on some royal duties. The baby was wide awake, staring at Jake with those intelligent eyes. Suddenly, the child reached up and wrapped his tiny fingers around Jake's thumb, just like human babies do. But this time, something magical happened. Through that simple touch, Jake felt everything the baby was feeling. The child's love for him was pure and simple, like sunshine after rain. But Jake also sensed something else. The baby's fear of being alone again, of going back to a world where no one knew how to comfort him or make him feel safe. "I can't leave you," Jake whispered, and he knew his choice was made. When Luna returned to the nursery, she took one look at Jake's face and smiled. "You've decided." "I have," Jake said, "but I have some conditions." Luna raised an eyebrow. "Conditions? You're negotiating with the queen of an intergalactic empire?" Jake grinned. "I'm negotiating with the woman I'm going to marry. There's a difference." His first condition surprised her. Jake didn't want to abandon Earth completely. Instead, he proposed creating an exchange program between their two worlds. Luna's people could learn about emotions and human care from Earth's doctors and nurses, while humans could benefit from alien medical technology that could cure diseases and heal injuries that were impossible to treat. "My friend Dr. Peterson back home has been working with premature babies his whole career," Jake explained. "Imagine what he could do with your healing technology, and imagine what your people could learn from watching him care for his tiny patients." Luna was fascinated by the idea. Her people had always believed they were too advanced to learn from less developed civilizations, but Jake was showing her that wisdom came in many forms. The second condition was about their future children. Jake wanted any kids they had together to grow up understanding both worlds, the logical perfection of Luna's people and the messy, beautiful emotions of humanity. "I want them to be able to think with their heads and feel with their hearts," Jake said. "The universe needs both." Luna agreed immediately. She had seen what happened when a civilization focused only on logic. They lost their souls. But she had also seen what pure emotion without wisdom could do to humans through Jake's memories of Earth's conflicts and problems. The wedding ceremony was unlike anything Jake could have imagined. It took place in a space between dimensions, where the laws of physics worked differently and thoughts could become visible. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, appearing as beings of light who communicated through colors and musical tones. But what touched Jake most was when Luna's people began to sing. They had spent so long suppressing emotions that they had forgotten they once had the most beautiful voices in the galaxy. As they sang ancient songs of love and joy, many of them cried for the first time in centuries. The little prince, now officially Jake's adopted son, glowed brighter than ever during the ceremony. His happiness was so intense that it created actual rainbows in the dimensional space around them. Jake realized that this child wouldn't just help his people find a new home. He would help them find their hearts again. Life as an alien king was nothing like Jake had expected. Instead of sitting on a throne making grand decisions, he spent most of his time teaching. He started schools throughout Luna's realm where children could learn to express emotions safely. He worked with parents who were terrified of hugging their own kids, showing them that love made families stronger, not weaker. The results were amazing. Within just a few months, Luna's people began to change. Their art became more colorful and expressive. Their music started to tell stories instead of just displaying technical skill. Even their technology improved, because inventors who could dream and feel were more creative than those who only calculated. But the biggest change was in Luna herself. Watching her learn to love was like watching a flower bloom. She started smiling more, laughing at Jake's silly jokes and crying during happy moments. She became not just a better queen, but a better person. "I never understood why my people's art was so beautiful to other species, but felt empty to us," she told Jake one day as they watched their son play with floating toys that responded to his emotions. "Now I know. We were creating beauty, but we couldn't feel it." The little prince grew into a remarkable child. By his second birthday, he could open small portals between dimensions, and his empathic abilities allowed him to comfort other children just by being near them. But more importantly, he was happy. He laughed every day, hugged his parents constantly, and treated every new experience with wonder and joy. Jake's exchange program with Earth became incredibly successful. Dr. Peterson and several other medical professionals came to work with Luna's people, while alien healers went to Earth hospitals. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were suddenly curable, and Luna's people learned that healing wasn't just about fixing bodies, it was about caring for souls. Years passed, and Jake never regretted his choice. He missed some. Things about Earth, pizza, baseball games, the smell of rain, but Luna made sure he could visit whenever he wanted. Their dimensional travel meant that a weekend trip to Earth was as easy as driving to the grocery store used to be. More importantly, Jake had found something he never knew he was looking for. A family that needed him as much as he needed them. Luna became not just his wife, but his best friend and partner in every adventure. Their son grew up bilingual in both English and telepathic communication, equally comfortable with human emotions and alien logic. One evening, as Jake sat on the observation deck watching new stars being born in a distant galaxy, Luna joined him with a cup of coffee she had learned to make just the way he liked it. "Any regrets?" she asked, settling beside him. Jake thought about his old apartment, his quiet life, the simple routine of caring for other people's babies. Then he looked at Luna, beautiful and glowing with contentment, and listened to their son's laughter echoing from the playroom. "Just one," he said with a grin. Luna looked worried. "What?" "I regret that it took an alien baby's crying to make me realize I was ready for a family of my own." Luna laughed and took his hand. "Well, when you put it that way, I suppose we should thank the universe for perfect timing." As they sat together watching the cosmos unfold before them, Jake realized that sometimes the most important decisions in life can't be made with logic or careful planning. Sometimes you just have to trust your heart, take a leap of faith, and believe that love, whether it's for a crying baby, an alien queen, or the vast possibilities of the universe, is always worth the risk. Their son's laughter drifted through the corridors of the ship, a sound that had become music to Jake's ears. It was the sound of hope, of love, of a future where two very different worlds had found a way to become one family. And it all started with one small act of kindness to a crying baby who just needed someone to care.